So first of all, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Off the Court podcast. Again, I'm Dalton Solbrig, one of the members of Off the Court. And as always, big shout out to ESPN Honolulu for this partnership and bringing us on, trying to shed a little bit of light on especially mental health and the aspects of performance as an athlete, not directly tied to your training. So today, I'm joined by Justin Allen. Justin grew up in the Chicagoland area. He started playing volleyball at a young age of 13, played all the way through high school, and then even played 2 years of college volleyball at Clark University. He then graduated from Eastern Illinois, and then he went on to do some coaching. He coached for 5 or 6 years at the high school level and also at the club level. And just over 2 years ago, Justin started his own podcast and social media brand called Anxious Ambition. And Anxious Ambition, they are trying to end the stigma surrounding mental health and kind of promote the idea that you can still pursue your dreams and pursue success despite having mental health struggles. So, Justin, welcome to the podcast, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Dalton. This is an honor. It's a privilege. Shout out to, honestly, ESPN Honolulu just for even, doing this partnership with you and taking that step to, this is a big step, even just promoting mental health and, ending that stigma that we're all trying to end. So this is huge. So congrats to you guys. And obviously, props to ESPN Honolulu for taking that risk.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's a really great thing to kind of see the mental health kind of conversations get to like a pretty big platform. And I'm definitely excited to have this opportunity. So first, I kind of just want to give you the floor. Sure. To kind of talk about your own mental health journey, maybe, starting from a young age, and maybe there was some different things along the way that were really big events for you. So, man, the floor is yours, and kind of just give us your story.
Cool. Yeah. So, I've been asked this before, right? And and every time, it's kind of funny that you say it, because every time I tell my story, it could be therapeutic for myself. And to be honest, I recommend that for everybody, and we'll get there. But, thinking back, I was always like a shy, nervous kid. And looking back, that was probably, anxiety in some ways. But for me, I was probably about 14 years old when I started noticing a little bit more. So I grew up playing basketball, but, I was the tall kid, I'm like 6'7" now. Being from the Chicagoland area, we actually have men's volleyball, which is a privilege. And I kind of got into that about maybe 13 years old, like you said. And, 14 years when I started playing club. And, I started noticing, and many athletes can, I sure relate to this, is the rituals surrounding sports. And for me, it started with, serving, let's just say, bouncing the ball a couple times, and then you got to serve it that way. And then it kind of became a mental thing where I started noticing, like, hey, let's just say I bounced it 3 times and it just didn't feel right. And that became some anxious thoughts. And then maybe it was, all right, now I got to tie my shoes a certain way. I got to swipe my feet before every play. And you kind of see where this is going. It became the anxiety kind of showed its face as OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. So for me, that's kind of where it all kind of started for me. Is more of like the OCD, where it became, at this point, I wouldn't say it was like affecting my life so much that it was an issue. It was just something that I did because I wanted to perform well. I wanted to, volleyball was my thing. I was a shy kid, and this kind of gave me, felt like I was pretty good, tall, had the opportunity to play at, a decent club. And, I just remember those little rituals in sports start to spill over into the real world. So whether that was washing my hands, and when I'm done washing my hands didn't feel right. Those of you who are listening or watching at home, that maybe you understand what I'm saying about the not feeling right. And that's kind of something that with OCD, when you hear OCD, I'm sure like a lot of people, you think, obsessively cleaning or, all that stuff. That's not me. That's not for a lot of people for the case. We're all just kind of lumped into it, but it's that obsessing. So I remember, man, I used to have all these rituals, tons of them, like, get in the car a certain way. If I saw a car that had its headlights out, I would touch the ceiling of my car. Like it was extreme. And it started to, like, all through high school, I started noticing it. And then, oddly enough, well, I'll say this too, at this time, I didn't know what it was. I'm 15, 16 years old. I don't know what the heck is going on. I just know that something seems a little off. And I'm sure I mentioned it to my parents, but to be honest with you, their generation, I'm sure your parents too, not to put them in a box, but like that generation we weren't talking about mental health. So it's like, oh, it's just stress or this and that. So, which is why, people like us talking about it is so huge. But our kids, hopefully that cycle kind of starts to end. But, I had all these, rituals, and, kind of, then it started, like, the anxiety started creeping in, started feeling a little more stressed is what it felt like back then. There wasn't any panic attacks, anxiety attacks at this point, nothing like that. It's just kind of where it all kind of started for me. And then I remember, going into my senior year. No, yeah. So going off to college, I remember, because, you gotta get your shots, you gotta get your vaccines and things like that. And that's a buzzword thing now, but we had to get vaccines to go to college. Yeah. And I remember just saying to my doctor, like, hey, and this is a general physician, nothing, they're not psychiatrists or anything. I just remember mentioning it to him, like, hey, kind of explaining the rituals and what I was going through. And, like, I start getting nauseous if I don't do things. All things looking back, that were definitely anxiety. I feel nauseous. I don't really want to eat, starting to feel maybe even a little depressed at the time, maybe a little bit. And he just said, it sounds like you got OCD. Here's a prescription. Mm-hmm. Right. So at the time, it was kind of, it was an indifferent feeling. It was validation in the sense that what I was going through had a name. It had, I kind of understood what I was going through a little bit more. But I'll say, I was 18 years old. I mean, I'm sure, when you're 18, we're young, dumb, and we know it, we know everything. And, we think you're, again, it's just like, you think you're the man, you're not worried about that stuff. So I remember he gave me the prescription. It was an antidepressant, which, would help with the OCD, kind of help, calm those thoughts. So to be quite frank, like, I would take it occasionally, which is not how you take these medications. I'm no doctor, but, those medications are things you're supposed to take every single day. Mm-hmm. So going into college, it was like, screw this. I don't need this. I'll just go through it, because at the time, like, it really wasn't debilitating. Like, it was just something that I dealt with. And I remember, freshman, sophomore year, like I said, I spent 2 years at Clark, and those 2 years were tough. Those 2 years were tough. I remember, turning to alcohol, a little bit of drugs, not really, but mainly alcohol, to cope with, it's like, oh, we're going out. I start feeling a little nervous, anxious, social anxiety. And so I just cope with, alcohol, or, smoking some weed, or whatever it was at the time. Which was nothing wrong with those things personally. It's just like, it was my coping mechanism at the time. So it was more of a way to get through it. And then I kind of remember, oddly enough, the first time I ever spoke about my mental health was at Clark. We, the team that we call ourselves a brotherhood. I'm sure, most teams have some aspect of that, right? Whatever you want to call it, right? Because that team, when you go to college, you know nobody. You got these brand new brothers, your teammates that, are there for you. You're their instant friends, right? Most of them, right? Yeah. But I remember we would have team meetings like once a week. I think it was during the winter months, like those 2-a-day type things, and we'd have meetings, and everyone, once a meeting, one person would tell their life story. So that was like a very blanket statement, like, hey, just speak about your life. And I remember at the time telling my team, like, hey, sometimes when I'm out of it at practice, sometimes when you might see me doing some rituals or things like that, which of course no one noticed, right? Like it's something that only you kind of notice. Um, so I told everyone I had OCD, anxiety, wasn't really in depression at the point, but man, and even that was pretty liberating for me. Even at that age, I mean, I was only probably 19 at the time. Um, and I had a little bit of support, but I will say, and this is no shade at anyone on my team. But it really was nothing we spoke about after that. Because I was the happy-go-lucky guy making everybody laugh. Like that was my thing, right? So everybody thought I was all good. And like I said, I wasn't asking for help. So like, it's on me. So, I mentioned that, and that was a little bit liberating. I was like, hey, this is what I deal with, a little weight off my shoulders. But to be honest, like it didn't really matter. I didn't really get any playing time, those first 2 years. I was always in the training room. My knees were always aching, and just always trying to do something. I spending more time in the athletic training room, becoming buddies with them than playing. So I remember, I did decide to transfer. I transferred out. To be completely honest, too, like I was at a smaller school, and I really went there for sports. I didn't really know what I wanted to do at the time. I thought it was athletic training. Turns out it wasn't. And and a big props to those doing athletic training. That is hard work. And if you're not totally into it, like it's not for you, right? Yeah. So I ended up leaving, and went to Eastern Illinois, where it was a totally different experience. You go from this small school where you're an athlete, where if you miss 2 classes, you fail. Like it's a big difference. So I get to Eastern, a lot more relaxed. Definitely turned a lot more to the drinking, smoking a lot of weed. Like, it's what I did. And it really, mental health was never on my mind, throughout the rest of that, my college career, to be honest with you. It wasn't really, I tell my roommates, hey, I deal with anxiety and OCD. And looking back, man, there was definitely some big depressive episodes that I just didn't know what was going on. But really it turned to when I graduated college. So back in like 2014, I remember graduating, and I told myself, like, hey, you gotta, you're in the real world now. There's no drinking all day, smoking all day, whatever it was. It's, you gotta get a job, you gotta do all this and that. Excuse me. So when I started, working, I wasn't doing those things. So all those mental struggles definitely showed their face. They weren't hiding anymore. And I remember, so I went to school for kinesiology, exercise science in particular. I don't do that now, but it was a passion of mine at the time. And I was a personal trainer, and I still remember it's my first recognizable panic attack. I was sitting down with a client doing like a sales presentation type thing. I didn't eat much that day. I was big on intermittent fasting at the time. So I wasn't eating a lot of caffeine. And I just remember that feeling, and I'm going to describe this because I think there's a lot of people that either haven't experienced a panic attack or have that don't even realize it. Honestly, to be relatable and to understand, like, I started sweating. I start getting dizzy, like a hot flash type feeling. You feel really flush, and you just want to get the heck out of there. I'm in this enclosed office. I get up. Luckily, it's funny enough, the person I was with ended up actually being my client, one of a woman I still talk to this day. And I told her the story, like, hey, when I left, like that was my first like panic attack, and it's pretty crazy because she's an older woman, and she totally understood, which is incredible to hear now. But my heart was racing, my chest was really tight. I mean, to be honest, like what I'm describing is like what a heart attack feels like, or is described. I feel like I've never had a heart attack, so I can't speak on that. But you think you are, because you're sitting there, everything's normal, you're a healthy adult, and you just feel like everything's you're going to die basically. And, so I get up, I leave, end up, telling her, hey, I just don't feel well. Ended up getting a ride home, I think, from work, which was crazy. And that's where things started to get pretty bad for me, to be completely honest, because and I think my story is common because once you have that first panic attack, um, now I started to fear having the panic attacks, right? So now I'm anxious about having a panic attack when I'm not having one. So it's kind of that's where the cycle started. So going to work, fearing your anxiety. I remember at the time I was also working at a nutritional supplement store, so like vitamins, herbs, things like that, and I started having attacks there. And that's when things kind of like I needed help. Um, it was something where I felt like I couldn't go to work. It started really affecting my life. And thinking back, it's like from 14 years old, where it's just this little thing, some tendencies to, I was probably 22 at the time, to these full blown panic attacks where I'm just in survival mode instead of actually like thriving and enjoying life. And so I remember seeking help. I went to a doctor and they put me on some medication. Um, and to be honest with you, and I don't know, how much we could talk about medication things, but just from my perspective, I'm not anti-medication. I'm not, like everyone needs to go on it type of guy, but I think that there's a time and a place. And if I wouldn't have gotten on the medication at the time, I wouldn't have been able to get where I am today, in a sense that it brought me to a level place. It brought my baseline anxiety to, functional. I was able to function. And in that time period, when I kind of got back to, I wasn't where I was before, but it was kind of like, hey, I can function now. That's when I started building, like I like to call like my anxiety like toolbox, right? Where maybe it was certain supplements. I'm really big into like holistic, the holistic approach to things. Like you can't just take an antidepressant, anti-anxiety medication and expect to just feel 100% better, because you need to put in the work and you need to figure out what else is going to work for you. So like with supplements, exercise, and not, I mean, to this day, it's always evolving, right? Some things that might work for me might not work for you, and vice versa. So, that kind of kept going. I felt a little bit better. And then throughout the years, I mean, to be completely honest, probably since that anxiety started creeping in around 22 years old, I'm 31 now. It's been up and down, man. It's been totally up and down. Depression, anxiety, OCD. Those are things that I've learned to live with, in a sense that I'm able to still chase my dreams. And what I mean by that is, I was always an ambitious kid, always, always trying to do more, wanted more in life. And I just remember being like, this isn't going to be my limiting belief. Like, this isn't going to be my limiting factor. Like, could it slow me down in time? Sure. Could it be, I have some awful days? Sure. But it's not going to define me. So, for me, I also started coaching volleyball. Right out of college, I was coaching. I still love the sport. I played a little intramurals when I was in college, kind of, feed my, scratch my itch. I loved being competitive. I'm still a very competitive person. I think anyone who is entrepreneurial it's also a competitive thing, where, you want to do more. You want to kind of just, for me, it's like, be better for me, be my best self every year, grow. So I was doing a lot of coaching with kids, high school level, basically like 16 to 18 years old. So to be honest, when I was 22 years old, pretty relatable. I wasn't the 40-year-old guy, 50-year-old guy. The kids were old enough to understand a lot. A little bit of banter, they can give it, I'll give it back. I was a trash talker. So, I definitely had a bond with these kids. And I remember, during these years, I wasn't really still talking about my mental health all that much. I had that moment in college, but when I was coaching, I just started talking about it. Meaning, I wouldn't just pour my problems onto people, but it was more of a, hey, is something bothering you? Just so I actually struggle with anxiety and this, that, and the other, and explain it to the to the kids. Next thing you know, you got a kid coming after practice to talk about it, or middle of having a tough game, and we're kind of like, hey, I'm feeling actually anxious, or things like that. So I started realizing that I had this. It was almost my duty, I felt like, to speak to these kids and tell them like what I go through, and I am not obviously completely healed or whatever you want to call it. Like, I'm not perfect, but I do feel like I'm a step ahead of them. Meaning, I can still offer advice. Even with you, man. I mean, like, yeah, you're a professional athlete. Even after your first year, you could still offer advice to someone that's fresh out of school, right? Like, because you are even one step ahead, even though you're not a 20-year vet or whatever, so you don't have to be, perfect to help people. So that coaching aspect was something like I really just enjoyed helping people. And to be honest with you, it helped my mental health. Being of service to other people it fills me up, fills my cup. And basically I was about 5 or 6 years into coaching when my day job, my career, I wasn't really able to work. I had to work some weekends. We get really busy in the summer, so it was really hard to coach club volleyball because club volleyball is all summer. We had our practices were from like 8 to 10, and I lived like an hour away. I had to get up at 5. So to be honest, it started not to make sense. So I stopped coaching, and that's kind of when I started Anxious Ambition. So I don't know if you want to hop in, but.
Yeah, man. I mean, just a couple of questions. Like,
yeah, of course.
Kind of going all the way back to the very beginning when you kind of first started noticing those signs of, these little kind of ritualistic things that you would do.
Yep.
Was there anybody else that kind of noticed those at the same time, like maybe parents or coach or maybe another teammate?
Honestly, no. I don't think. No, I don't think so. And to be honest with you, if you think about it, I mean, that's pretty normal in sports, right? And we kind of normalize it, whether it's baseball or basketball. I mean, look at shooting a free throw, right? I'm sure there's a lot of those guys that have, they get obsessed with it, where if they don't do it the right way, as I like to say, they might be feeling a little anxious, stress, things like that. So I don't think so. No one ever brought it up to me. I remember telling one of my buddies, because, man, I had this crazy ritual. And we can kind of get into how I kind of stopped a lot of them. I had this one, man, this is so weird. I haven't thought about this in a long time. I had a buddy who was born on 9/11. Okay. And every time the score was 9/11, I would say this whole thing in my head. I can't actually remember. It was something like, happy birthday to Mike, and prayers to everyone that lost their lives in 9/11. And obviously, thoughts and prayers to all those people. But this was obsessive thought. And it would just happen all the time. And I remember telling him, he's like, what the hell are you doing, man? It's I don't know. I can't stop. Because I'm seeing success on the court. And I think that's a problem too, is you just think, okay, well, if I change anything, things are going to go downhill.
Right.
In life, in the game. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, for sure, I have that. I have a serving routine that I always do, and like you said, basketball players, they have this free throw routine. But in your opinion, was there ever kind of a point that you noticed that it kind of really affected your play? Because I mean, if it's something simple like the way you tie your shoes or the way you go back and bounce the ball before you serve. I mean, those things are that's how sports is.
Right.
But was there any ever anything that you were like, oh man, this one is kind of a little bit deeper, or maybe this one really kind of affects the way that I play?
Sure. Nothing that comes to mind, to be honest with you, but it was more of like, I'm just thinking back to like whatever I was doing in the game it was part of the game. Besides like that whole 9/11 thing, which honestly I got through pretty quickly. But like before every play, when we're, let's see, yeah, when we're serving, you're up at the net blocking. I would always, wipe my feet. Actually, even on service eve. And I remember there was times like I didn't do it, and it'd be like mid play, and I'm like stopping and doing it. But like it was never a thing where it never totally like sabotaged my performance or anything like that. But it was definitely like in my head, where I'm sure looking back, if I was more mentally clear, instead of like maybe having those moments of anxiety, that I probably would have been a better player, performed better. So looking back, yeah, I mean, it was never anything like crazy like that. It was just like but it was always in my head, and it would be like, hey, you better wipe your feet now, or you're gonna miss this serve, or you're gonna, miss this hit, and maybe it happened. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to look back at, but it's I'm sure it affected me, man, because I was, I was especially being someone that was fighting for a spot.
Mm-hmm.
Fighting for a spot. It's not like I was confident that I was going to play, because so I was, that performance anxiety of needing to play well. So I was probably a little more anal about doing those tasks.
Yeah.
So.
No, and I think that's interesting, because there's always this kind of fine line between being like mentally tough, like kind of like you said, like doing all these things to make your mentality good that you can perform, but at the same time, not pushing those things away too much. And so, I mean, I think that's a really nice way to put it. And then going a little bit more forward, that first time where you kind of like got diagnosed with OCD, I know you said that was kind of a relief. Was there anybody in your life at that moment that was kind of maybe a little bit confused, like maybe your parents or maybe your coach or teammates, people that kind of knew about the diagnosis and knew about the medication? Because I think there's always a little bit of kind of nervousness around like taking a medication. So yeah, just go talk a little bit about your experience kind of when you first got diagnosed.
Yeah. So when I first got diagnosed, I to be honest with you, I think the people around me, I don't want to say belittled it, because I don't think that's the right way to look at it. I think it was more of it wasn't that big of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
It was more of because like I mentioned, I know my parents are going to listen to this, so sorry, but I just don't think they knew. And I didn't talk about it all that much. I really didn't. So it was like that one meeting, telling my teammates, and then, man, like I remember, you know what? I'll tell this story too, because I remember, speaking of the medication. So, man, I forgot about this. So my freshman year, I was taking the medication pretty as much as, I was taking it, but I wasn't taking it as much as I should, but I was taking it. And I remember like our first party, man, I got like blackout drunk, and not off a lot of booze, but I was mixing it with alcohol mixed with antidepressant. And I remember getting in trouble. I mean, being at a small school, fine line, man. It wasn't like some of these state schools where party gets busted, everyone, hey, get out of here. It was, hey, you're getting written up, you're getting a strike from the team, all this stuff. And I remember talking to the counselor about like, hey, yes, I was drinking, but I'm also on medication. So, which I shouldn't have been doing, but man, that's really the only time I really talked about it. I didn't really talk about it that much.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't something that I brought that much light to. My parents, going back to that, I do have some family. Like, this runs in the family in a sense that mental health issues. Like I actually had a cousin who, man, I never know how to say this. She died of suicide. To be politically correct. My family members, a couple in particular, on medications as well. So it almost felt like, okay, like welcome to the family. Like, hey, it's okay. You're your brother takes it, your sister takes it. It is what it is. Which I guess was, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but like it was just something that it really wasn't that big of a deal. It really wasn't until like recently, probably since I started like Anxious Ambition, that like family truly understood like what I went through or go through. Because I've been a lot more vocal, obviously, it's on the internet, So,
Yeah.
But yeah, and I shouldn't answer your question directly, but it really wasn't a topic. It wasn't.
Mhm.
Because it was taboo, man. It was taboo. It's still kind of, it's not as much, but it was just, it was almost like I told them, I have ADHD and I take Adderall.
Mhm.
Like if someone told you that, do you really, I mean, are you going to, you're not going to check on your buddies, see if they're ADHD, that's kind of how it kind of was. I think it was just kind of like, oh, that's Justin. That's why he's so wacky and does whatever, wild child kind of guy. And that's just me. That's just him, but yeah.
And then, just one more question before we move into talking about Anxious Ambition. So kind of like throughout, especially kind of once you got to college and got a little bit older, and the anxiety and started to get a little bit more intense. And then, you had those panic attacks. It started to affect your work life or your social life and things like that. Was there ever a point where you kind of started trying to do certain things like meditation or things like that? Like how early did you kind of start doing a little bit of research in that? And then also how early did you kind of like try to incorporate that into your daily life?
Sure. So before I got on the medication, I do remember, like I said, so I was working at the supplement store, and to be honest with you, like I thought I was kind of going to school for that, and I wasn't. Like I was going to exercise science, so my goal was always to kind of get into supplements and things like that. So that's kind of where I first started. It was like, okay, and I've always been a curious kind of do-it-yourself kind of guy where, okay, what vitamins should I be taking? What things could I be deficient in that could be contributing to my anxiety? Food, alcohol, things like that. You bring up meditation is huge. I did, I started to really get into meditation. Something that really, helped me get through a lot. But I'll say this, when I was super anxious, before I got on the medication, I was also getting depressed. And those of you who've been through depression, when you're depressed, you don't want to do these things. You don't have the motivation to, go, I'm going to say, just go work out. Sure. I don't want to get out of bed, So to be honest with you, it was getting on the medication that gave me that baseline. And then I started to really dive into, okay, I'm okay with being on this medication, but I want to do everything I can to just live the best life I can. So, and that's been 8-10 years of trial and error. So I will say some things that really helped me just kind of right off the bat was, I mentioned earlier, was being like heavily caffeinated. I haven't had caffeine. Well, I'll say this. I haven't I'll probably drink like a pop or something with a little caffeine occasionally. Honestly, it's probably as like a mixer, like for like drink. Like it's not like I don't like reach for a can of Coke, but I gave up caffeine probably like 7 years ago. So like for me, that was a trigger. And I don't mean like avoiding your triggers as in like if going to the mall is a trigger for you, you should avoid it. More of like things that I'm doing to myself that are increasing my anxiety. So I kind of started to realize that, okay, I have anxiety. Like everyone experiences anxiety. But I experienced a little bit more. So what can I do to minimize it? It may never go away, but what am I doing that's, making it worse? So at the time it was like intermittent fasting was not helping me, which, again, I'm not a doctor, but I was having blood sugar issues. When your blood sugar is low, your anxiety is going to go up, and it can feel like an anxiety attack. Caffeine. I mean, even people that don't really experience or have an anxiety disorder, whatever you want to call it, if they have too much caffeine, jittery, heart palpitations, you know, you might be nervous. So getting rid of that helped me a lot. Um, Realizing like alcohol. And I still drink occasionally. It's definitely not something I do every day, but now recognizing, hey, if I drink that next day, I'm more anxious. So it started becoming this like lifelong journey of, okay, what's helping me and what's hurting me. So, you know, taking those things out, and maybe it's some teas, you know, maybe some, you know, lavender tea, chamomile tea. On the supplement side, B vitamins, D3. But here's the other thing: you might take those things and it might increase your anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So it's totally, there's, you know, it's not a one size fits all. Today, for example, I was, and it just kind of happened. You know, I was just going about my day working, and I just felt her feeling really anxious. Now I was hungry. You know, probably an hour passed when I should have ate lunch. Was probably dehydrated. You know, I was working, kind of just not paying. You know, just you're just in the zone. You forget to do these things. Um, but I took some magnesium, which I know for me helps calm me down, helps calm the it puts you more in like a parasympathetic state, so a little bit more relaxed. Doesn't knock you out like some drugs will, but just kind of calms me down. Got some water, got some food, felt a lot better, right? That's only from experience. And like meditation, like you mentioned, you know, doing that stuff. There's so many things that I've tried, that I do every day, that I know helps my mental health, and like that's kind of what I'm trying to share with people. It's, you know, if you came to me and you're like, hey man, you help with my anxiety, and I gave you all the stuff that I do, yeah, it might help you, but you also need to keep doing other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like an example, I was on my podcast, I had on my friend Jared, and we were talking about weighted blankets. People love weighted blankets. But what if I'm having a hard time breathing?
Yeah.
Think that weighted blanket is going to do much for you? And it's something that you have to attack from different angles.
Mm-hmm.
Man, could talk about anxiety for hours. You know, it's just kind of, yeah. I don't know if you get to your next question.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's great. I think there's such like a beautiful piece of advice in there too for anybody experiencing anxiety, depression, or to be honest, not like
Yeah.
just having these tools to manage stress, being able to like put yourself in a good situation that you can go out to hang out with your friends and not have, you know, like you said, not have to smoke weed or drink before you do that. Just try to expand your toolbox. I think that's such a good piece of advice, because I think, you know, you might put, you know, Justin side by side with someone else. Both of you guys have anxiety, but at the end of the day, like the two different anxieties are so completely different. I mean, it's like snowflakes at that point. Everybody's completely unique, whether or not you get diagnosed as the same thing. You know, the things that help and the things that hurt it are going to be completely different from person to person.
Absolutely.
So yeah, now talking about Anxious Ambition, this
Sure.
kind of podcast and social media brand that you've started, you know, kind of give us the rundown, how you started it, how you thought of the name, how you think of people to bring on your podcast. Yeah, just go for it.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, to be honest, starting with the name, I've been trying to rack my brain about it, and I can't figure out like the manifestation moment. I can't figure out what, like how, but it just came to me. Little backstory. So I've always been like an entrepreneurial type of guy. So whether it was, you know, man, I DJ'd in college to make cash. We were making t-shirts, you know, for homecoming events, things like that. I say we, like some of my roommates, I was selling bootleg Dr. Dre Beats headphones. Man, we were doing everything, right? So always had that like entrepreneurial spirit. Hence like the ambition part. And I remember, so I always had these little endeavors. I've always tried things, you know, people that in entrepreneurship, people that are, you know, have quote unquote made it, they'll always tell you like, you're going to fail a lot before you get to something that works. And I've been that, you know, I've had some successes and they fail, successes and they fail. But there's lessons to be learned there. I mean, it's pretty cliche to say, but you know, you either win or you learn, but it's completely true. So I remember, when I stopped coaching, I still had that like itch to help people, and I really wasn't really with my job. Yeah, I help people, but it's not on that type of like personal level.
Mm-hmm.
So like I knew I wanted to do something, and I knew, mental health has always been something that's been just such a passion of mine. I noticed that, and call it selfish, but I notice when I talk about it, I feel better. And if I can help other people do that, they're going to feel better. Um, and I remember, I was kind of thinking about the idea. Um, and I initially, it was just to kind of create a page. I'm gonna tell my story, start making YouTube videos, using the tips, like, with the supplements, like supplements to try, techniques to try. Um, I was kind of toying with the idea, and to be honest with you, I remember, I think it was like two people, in about 2 weeks span, that weren't like my best friends, but people I just knew, died of suicide. So it was like a friend of a friend, and then someone else, and it was like, it hit me hard, man. It hit me hard. It was the thought of, people aren't talking about this enough, and I had this thought, and you can, maybe it's my ego, but it was kind of like, man, I wish I could have just talked to those people, even though we weren't best of friends. Someone I didn't even know. It was just, it hit home because it was a friend of a friend, and it was like, man, if I could just talk to them, explain to them, like, hey, you really aren't alone in this. Because here's the thing. I mean, like, if you're experiencing anxiety, depression, whatever it is, maybe your friends don't understand. That's okay. It's totally okay. But if you truly feel alone, that's when things get bad. That's when, fortunately, things happen. And I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to come out, and I think my first video was just me kind of briefly telling my story, what I went through or what I go through. And it kind of just snowballed to what it is today, 2.5 years later. Initially it was kind of just, hey, I'm going to post on Instagram, YouTube. We're going to make merch. So the shirt I'm wearing now, you're not alone, is kind of, one of our sayings. I mean, it's not unique, but it's just the truth. And, the idea behind the clothing is, if I wear this out in public, or wear some of our other apparel, wristband, things like that, it's more of a, if I'm walking past Dalton, or maybe, we're at a party or something, family party, whatever it is, it's to start the conversations. It's not to, hey, look at me, I have anxiety. None of it's like that. It's just more of a, hey, what does that mean? Hey, what does, you see anxious ambition, like, oh, what's that about? I experience anxiety. Is that what that's about? And now look at us. Now we're talking. Now we're having conversations. And that's what needs to happen, to actually end the stigma around mental health, and also help other people be a part of the community. So like what I mentioned with, maybe not having, and I have supportive friends, so I'm not going to, hopefully if they're listening, I'm thinking, they're not in my corner, but there's people that don't. There's people that don't have any friends. There's people that, maybe they moved to somewhere and they don't know anybody. So with the internet, with Instagram, we have this community. Anyone that follows Anxious Ambition, you can probably DM any of those people and have a conversation, and they can relate to you. Now there's a community of people you can talk to, you can vent to, you can DM me whenever you want. I mean, I'm not going to give you professional advice because I'm not a professional, but I'll listen and help direct you if you need help, and that was kind of where Anxious Ambition started. And then, it was probably about a year and a half in when, to be honest with you, I was kind of burnt out just making these tutorial videos on top 5 supplements and all this stuff, which is cool, but I like having conversations like this. You came on my show. It was awesome. So glad you came on. But like, those are the conversations I want to have. And people hearing those stories, the conversations I'm having in the DMs, like, hey, why don't you come on the show? Let's talk. Because yeah, I had someone actually the other day, he's like, I'd love to come on the show. Like, I'm not a somebody. It's like, I'm not a somebody either. Like, what are you talking about? Like, we're just a couple of guys, guy and a girl, whatever. We're just talking about mental health. And you just hope that one person, literally one person, hears that podcast or sees that clip on Instagram that it either helps them feel not alone, maybe helps them go get the help they need, tell their parents, tell their wife, go make that doctor's appointment. It's, we kind of hope it'd be like a kick in the ass, like go get the help you need. And the support's there. So, we also, like with the clothing, we do donate a portion of our proceeds to, NAMI, which is a National Alliance on Mental Illness. And basically what they do is they help give resources to people struggling with a mental illness and also their families, which is huge. So like, for me, like if my parents wanted, like, growing up, they wanted to go, they get the same presentations that the people with the mental illness get, so they can start to relate and then, talk to other people, like, if maybe other dads that have kids that are dealing with, depression. So it's kind of this really cool experience. This thing they offer, it's completely free. So love to support that. So, if you do purchase from us, like it's either one, going back into the podcast to help other people, or it's going directly to organizations like that. And so yeah, that's what Anxious Ambition is all about, man. It's just all about spreading the word, giving people a platform to, it's clear, speak their truth. It's the truth of the matter. We want people to just feel comfortable and just start living, taking the mask off. That's what it's about. It's, I've had guests that, after the show have been like, hey, I've never even said that before. And it was liberating, and that's the whole point. Like, you don't have to come on a podcast to do that. I do want to say this, one piece of advice I'd give anybody struggling, mental health, it's, tell your story, whether it's making a post on Instagram, YouTube video, maybe it's even just writing a letter to someone you can trust. Maybe that's not your parents. Maybe that's not, your family. And that's okay. That's okay. Like there's always someone you can trust. Screw it. Email, message me. I don't care. Just, it's liberating to get it off your chest, because, everyone that knows me close knows that I do Anxious Ambition. It's not the topic of discussion every time I see them, but I also now feel comfortable saying like, hey, you know what? I'm actually, you don't have to BS people anymore. Like, no, actually, you know what? I can't come out today. I actually having a panic attack. I'm having a depressive episode. It allows you to be yourself, be honest. And yes, I still struggle, but it takes the edge off a little. So,
yeah. So with I've watched a bunch of your episodes, and obviously I had the amazing opportunity to come on and get interviewed by you. Yep. Was there any kind of just really, really special episodes that you have where you were kind of just like, maybe it just opened your mind up to something completely new that you hadn't really gotten into before with mental health? Was there anybody that came on that kind of just really changed your mind on anything?
Wow. It's a good question. It's a really good question. Yeah, I will say this. I definitely learned something from every conversation I have. Every conversation. One that kind of stands out is my most recent one. I had on Sam Led Consulting, I think, on Instagram. And he's a like transformational like mindset coach. And I've always been a big like mindset guy, but sometimes some of that stuff's easier said than done. Meaning your mindset can really control, how you're feeling. Something he spoke about that really hit home, and it's definitely something I've been trying to practice more and more, is basically just, what you need to do. What you need to do. Whether it's you're having an anxiety attack, you're been depressed for 3 weeks, you are stressed, even stress, these big words like anxiety and depression, like this can be boiled down to like stress, even like if you're stressed about something, right? What you need to do. You do. That, maybe you should go to the doctor. Maybe you should call your mom. You call your therapist. I'll be upfront because I know it'll help people. I struggled this year through the winter months. I typically am on an antidepressant. I mean, honestly, I've been on and off them for like 8, 9 years at this point, and typically the cycle for me is at some point I get sick of the side effects. I get off safely. I don't just stop taking it. So please, if you're on medication, do not do that. Talk to your doctor. But I'll get off the medication. About middle of winter hits, boom, back on them. Right, becomes too much. And this time around, it was more of a, hey, how about I try every single thing I know I need to be doing before I do this? Everything, right? And for me, that was, trying to clean up my diet, avoiding certain foods that are triggers for me. That's another thing. Food can trigger your mental health issues. Sugars, some people it's dairy, gluten, any some sensitivities you might have. It's not, like I said, not one size fits all, right? This is just for me. But I knew what I had to do because I knew I wasn't putting in my all. I wasn't exercising. I wasn't doing my journaling. I wasn't doing these things. So why just hop on a medication right away before I actually try what I know can help too? So for me, what that looks like is, not touching my phone in the mornings, wake up. And I will eventually, but like 30 minutes, the first like 30 minutes of the day, I'm not going to touch it. Because once you start stimulating yourself with your phone, now you could be in an anxious state and it wasn't even your fault. It was just because you looked at your phone and something popped up. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of stimulus too. You really don't want to stimulate your brain immediately when you wake up, like that. So I forced myself. I'm like, hey, I'm going to work out every day. I'm going to start journaling before I get in the shower. Just get it out of the way because I know when I get home from work, I'm exhausted. So it goes back to the right? Mm-hmm. If you need to do that stuff. If you're someone that's not going to work out after work and all you do is say, I'll work out after work, you're never going to do it. So like I would do those things. I would drink a bunch of water, like just simple. It was just simple things even. But I'll tell you this, the hardest part was getting back into therapy. Get back into therapy. It was the hardest thing I did. It was something that I did therapy for about maybe 2 years or so. Probably about 3 or 4 years ago was when I did it for a year or so and stopped. And now I knew that this was something I had to do. I had to do it. I couldn't get out of a rut. I was overwhelmed with work. I was overwhelmed with life, the anxiety, the depression. So I started therapy again. Right 2 weeks ago, and like I feel better, man. I feel better. But it's like it goes back to I knew I had to do that stuff. Like I'm sure like even you, like when you came on my show, you talked about how you're watching Netflix, just hanging out, and I'm sure at some points you're laying down there watching the show, and being like, man, I should be doing something else, mm-hmm. Right? So. Took a long time to answer your question, but I mean that's the truth, man. Like what you need to do, so dig deep, and maybe all it is I need help. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's all. Maybe you don't know the direction, but you need hey, I can't do it, so I need help.
Yeah.
So.
No, I mean absolutely, and I think sometimes, like you said, it's a tiny little step. Sometimes it could literally just be looking at yourself in the mirror and saying like like you said, I could use some help with this. And mm-hmm. I think another really good point that is kind of in there is you're not always going to be motivated and probably rarely motivated to do these things, to get up and go and work out or meditate. Never. Or no, exactly. And I think it's such a not a good expectation to have for yourself if you're somebody like this, going through mm-hmm. mental health, is you're not going to be motivated. But trying to find that discipline, I think tying it to other behaviors is a big thing that helps. Maybe there's something that you already do every single day and just trying to tie something else to that. Most people, I guess, probably maybe eat something for breakfast every day. So tie a 2-minute meditation or 2-minute breathing session with your breakfast, and I think that's another really good way to kind of create those disciplines. Cause like I said, it's rare. It's rare to have a person who's motivated every single day. And if someone tells you that they're motivated every single day, they're straight up lying. It's
for sure
not true.
Man.
So yeah, man, just to wrap it up, just the final question. I think just a big thing that we want to do with this podcast is just give really good advice and kind of, encourage people to tell their stories. So I kind of want to go back through kind of I think you had like three very big while I was listening, moments in your life. So what is your advice to that kid who goes in the doctor's office for that first time and the doctor says, you have OCD, here's some medication for it. And then what's your advice to that 22-year-old that has his first panic attack? And then, what's your advice to this guy who just started this podcast and is really trying to reach out and get more people to talk about anxiety and depression?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So, I mean, it's great questions, man. Going back to like the first, like the diagnosis, man, what would I tell myself? Stop being like, don't be stubborn.
Mm-hmm.
If, things might get worse, I'm going to be honest with myself. Like, hey, things might get worse, and don't be afraid to take that medication. Take it seriously, though. Don't just binge drink while you're on it. Do these things that that you think you should be doing when there's things that you should be doing, kind of thing. Yeah, man, that's a tough one. I think I would just tell myself that, to be honest with you, like, hey, man, you're young. This you're going to go through this for maybe potentially the rest of your life in some aspects, and don't be afraid, because you're going to learn from this, and eventually you're going to turn it into this, anxious ambition, and you're going to be able to meet all these great people, like yourself, man, like connections. It's been eye-opening. And I would tell myself that, hey, like, you may feel alone right now, but there's some people that are going to be there for you, that and you're going to be there for other people. Like, you're going to go through some stuff, and you're going to be able to help other people for it too. And yeah. And what was the second one?
When after you had your first panic attack, and once that anxiety kind of started getting worse and really affecting your daily life.
Yeah, I think, at first, I think I would console myself at first. And that's a weird thing to say, but because I say that because when you're going through anxiety or panic attacks, to the outside world, you may not look like anything's going on. And it would be more of maybe not consoling, but more of a validation, to say, hey, man, I know what you're going through. It is tough. You're going to go through these again, but it's real. This isn't something you're making up in your mind. But you're going to learn. You're going to learn through these experiences. You're going to learn what helps, what makes things worse, but I think the biggest thing is just don't give up. Don't give up, because you're going to figure out what works for you. And just keep trying, because there's going to be a lot of things that don't. But keep pushing through. And, to get to the anxious ambition part, it's kind of funny you bring that up, because it's like part of what we're trying to do is to get people to keep chasing their dreams, even though we're dealing with all this stuff, like the low motivation. It's stick to your strategies, man. Whatever you're telling other people to do, do it yourself. Whether it's, and I kind of want to throw this out there too. You mentioned, like the motivation part, getting to, when you have these dreams, right? Aspirations, goals, financially, it doesn't have to be finances. It could be anything, right? But if you have that goal, you got to break it down into smaller pieces to meet those goals, but also start realizing what things actually help motivate you. So like for me, it's And I love what you said too earlier about like kind of making a part of your day that's already kind of happening, like in that sense where, so for work, and this is not to brag, I do not like getting up early, but for my job I got to be in the office at 7, so I'm up at 5. Okay, so now I could get up at 6 and probably still make it, but for me I get up at 5, you know. And it used to be spend a half hour on your phone till you got to get in the shower.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's okay, you can go on your phone, but first you're going to do a little bit of exercise. It doesn't have to be a full blown workout. I like something that I started doing is just do a little bit. Promise yourself you're going to do a little bit. So for me, it's honestly, hey, every morning you're going to do 3 sets of something. That's easy. Anyone, I could do 3 sets of air squats and be, hey, cool, I did something today. But it's a snowball, right? So that 3 sets could turn into 12, 14, whatever, more. Same thing with journaling. So I journal every day. And a lot of the time I do not want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do it. But you got to, when you're struggling with mental health or you have dreams in general, you got to discipline yourself, man, because you're the only one that can, get you to do things. So it's, hey, every day you're going to journal. And part of what I do is I'll write down 5 things I'm grateful for. Kind of helps put me in a little more of a grateful state. Like, you're not going to be anxious. You're like, hey, I'm grateful for, and anyone can do this, grateful for your wife, grateful for my dog, grateful for having bottles of water, like there's always something, right? I'm grateful to have hot water to get in the shower.
Mm-hmm.
But then what I do is I write down my 10 goals, like lifelong goals. And I suggest people do that for as long as here's what I'm going to say. When you start writing down your 10 goals, you're going to notice they start to change and they actually start to come in order. What's a priority to you? Whether that's a financial goal, you want to buy a house, you want to support your family, you want to, like for me, one of them is like be mentally well, be physically fit, get out of certain debts, right? And every day I write that down. Every day. And sometimes it's hard to write it down because it's like, God damn, like that's still a stressor of mine. But it's a daily reminder of why I go to work hard, why I'm chasing those dreams, why I'm trying to meet success, right? So that I can knock those things off the list. Now, after I do that, though, I write 3 daily goals. What am I going to do today to attack those goals? And maybe, I'll be honest, there's a lot of mornings where all I write down is just do my best that day. Because maybe it is a tough day. Maybe maybe I woke up crying because I was so anxious or depressed. Like, it happens, right? So it's like, do my best that day, be present at home and get some emails done. Like, it could be as simple as that. So like forcing, and this is advice I give anyone, honestly, if you have aspirations in general, I don't care if you don't have any mental health issues, journaling can be so just, it keeps you focused, man. It keeps you focused. Because when you're in the darkness, it's hard to remember why you're doing things. Hey, why did I get up at 5? I could get up at 6. I could have, why am I not just surfing my phone? So it's those things. And then also I want to give this piece of advice too, just in general, because I think it'd be really, really helpful for people. After I do those things, it's usually pretty quick. Get to it quick. But then I'll journal, like just legit, just start writing down things from the day before. Whether it's stressors, whether it's successes, it's kind of unloading. Someone that deals with anxiety, you've got all these thoughts. And if you don't get them out of your head, they're just going to stay in there. So whether it's, if you're an athlete and you got a big game coming up, or you're just nervous about tryouts or anything, right? Journaling can be really helpful. Just kind of helps unload it, right? And honestly, writing, not just like on your phone is cool. It works, but there's something powerful about writing stuff down. And I just want to throw that in there. I know I expanded on your question, but just some advice I wanted to give anyone out there that like this little piece, like a journal, can be so powerful. you don't need to go spend all this money on certain things, like just buying yourself a journal or spiral notebook. It doesn't matter, man. Just there's a lot of power to it.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that's so huge, all this stuff that you just went through as an athlete, especially kind of the part about having goals, because if you're an athlete, then you have some sort of athletic goal.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that there's a very, very small percentage of people that really like bare bones play sports just to have fun.
Right.
Everybody that likes to play sports is at least a little bit competitive. Maybe you do sports just because your goal is to stay in shape and you want to do it in kind of a more fun way. Maybe you have these aspirations to win an NBA championship or go to the Olympics or things like that. I think it's one thing that all athletes have in common, that we have goals, and usually several of them.
Mm-hmm.
You have immediate goals of, I got to work out today and I want to get better today. In a week, I want to be better at my sport. In 2 years, I want to be playing for a better team, or maybe I want to be a starter. And just doing those little things, like you said, I mean, doing some journaling to kind of put those goals into perspective and get those stressors from the previous day kind of just out, on paper. Maybe they're not a conversation with somebody, but it's out of your head. It's on paper.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. And I think it's just, like I said, the thing that all athletes have in common is they want to perform when it gets down to it. And these things help with your performance, right? And it might not seem like it right away, but at some point, you kind of start to notice, like, man, when I don't get on my phone for 30 minutes at the start of the day, now, at the end of the week, I have hours that I banked, doing something to help myself, especially, if it's something like working out, or maybe if it's something like injury prevention or watching film just to get better at your
Mm-hmm.
sport. You can just rack up hours when you kind of just get rid of these behaviors, like you said, that not only make your mental health worse, but
Time
don't really,
wasters.
they don't get you anywhere. So yeah, man, I love that. So Justin, man, thank you so much for coming on, dude. That was
No
a
problem.
really great conversation. So definitely go follow Anxious Ambition. And to buy the merchandise, like the shirts and stuff, is that through your Instagram as well?
Yeah. So honestly, if you get to the Instagram, you'll find everything. It's just Anxious Ambition. It's one word. Anxiousambition.com is where you'd find the merchandise. All the podcasts are video podcasts as well. So find us on YouTube. Honestly, everything's Anxious Ambition. So hop on Google or honestly, you get to the Instagram, you'll find everything. Link in bio stuff. It's true. Everything's in there, man.
Yep.
I also did kind of want to, shout out one other thing. We just dropped these new bracelets, and I kind of want to show them off because we're pretty proud of them. Basically, they just, they say you're not alone. It's very subtle. This isn't in your face, right? It's a daily reminder. It's, you're driving to work, you're at the gym or whatever it is, and you're having a tough time, no matter what it is, right? And maybe you have that. I'll see it sometimes, be like, you're not alone. It's like, man, you're right. It's like, yeah, this sucks. This is tough, but there's other people out there that are, dealing with this too. And it just feels good to know that you're not the only person struggling. And we wanted to come up with something, honestly, because everyone can afford it too. It's affordable. We're not trying to make a bunch of money off it. It's like, we want to donate some money. We want to spread the word and just start conversations. And thank you so much, to Dalton Off the Court, ESPN Honolulu, for this opportunity to come on today. I know I said a lot, and I can keep going, man. I love talking about mental health. And if anyone's out there too, just wants someone to chat with, hop on Instagram, reach out to me. More than happy to talk to you. Like I said, I'm not a professional in this space, but if I can help guide you, or even just listen, I'm here. Yeah.
Awesome, man. I love it. So definitely go give Anxious Ambition a follow, check out all their stuff. And yeah, man, thank you, Justin. Thank you, ESPN Honolulu, again, for this really special opportunity. And to everybody watching, I hope you enjoy this episode and tune in next week for another podcast for Off the Court, where we bring some more people on to tell their story and give you guys advice. So again, thanks, Justin, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you. Peace out, everybody. Thank you.